Okay, so you're coming up on just about 8 years in the office. So tell us a little bit about what kind of how that's changed since you got there. What sort of changes you've implemented, and what more you'd still like to do differently.
Yeah, so I mean, in the 8 years, a lot has changed. I've learned a lot about the job myself, obviously. Um, when I first started there, one of the first changes that we ended up making was going to a hosted solution, which means um, when I started, folks used to, at the end of the day, go up to servers in the attic and actually get these cartridges that was basically all the land data, and they would take it home just in case something happened at the courthouse, a fire or flood or a tornado came through, that we would have all that data. And since it seemed very archaic to me when we started, but we went to a hosted solution, which means now they're in a tier 4 data center. Um, I can't go into the specifics of exactly what a tier 4 data center is, other than the fact that that's what banks use, that's what the FBI uses, NSA, and it's the highest level of security that we have. So it's stored in multiple servers across the country. So if something bad were to happen, a hurricane hitting a certain part of the country, or tornadoes, that it's in other areas backed up as well. So that was one big upgrade that we made right away. We've also began digitizing our back records. So it's been referenced that many counties digitize their records, and there's truth to that. When things get recorded, I think most counties in the country, not all, but most, scan those in digitally, put it into their software, and then return the original paperwork to whoever submitted the document. The difference is that we went back and we have scanned in all of our land records from when the first land records here in Dubuque County. So when we've done that, it's also on a public facing website. So I think I've spent some time in the past with some of your staff just showing them how to access it, so that you can do it from your computer at the office or home computer, and not have to come in and sit on public terminals in the courthouse. So that's something that most county recorders are trying to do right now, and using that ARPA funds to backdate all their land records. The beauty of it is that we're all done. We have no more land records to digitize and to get into the system. So I mean, if something happened again where the courthouse burnt down, natural disaster, we would have all of our land records in a safe, secure location, whereas most counties can't say that. That was another big step that I'm proud of that we've made since I've been there. We have also scanned all of our index records into the system. In doing that, the state is currently getting vital records in a very slow process. It's been a slow incremental process. So it's depending on what type of record it is, but back to like the 80s, they have most birth records are in the system. And the hope is, and the expectation is, that the state will be able to do that with all vital records. So it wouldn't be a cost at all to the county. That's a step in the right direction. I went through the recorder certification program, which was a huge asset for me at the beginning to learn the ropes and learn from folks that have done this before. And something that surprised me in my first term is that I was asked to serve on the executive board. I spent a year as the secretary, a year as vice president, and a year as president of our state association. And that's, it was something that I was still learning the job at that time, but it was a huge responsibility and something that, I'm very proud of to have served in that role. So, I mean, those are some of the big things. We've renovated the office. And the renovation, I mean, it's been done for a number of reasons, but at the top of my mind, and the primary reasons why we renovated the space was, number one, that we wanted to make it ADA compliant. Our public terminals used to be up a set of steps that were kind of steep and not necessarily all equal steps. So we were able to get those now in a much more convenient location for the public. Those, frankly, with them being digitized, we don't have as many people coming in through the door that way. But also to provide privacy for customers. There's times where, with our vital records, for birth records, are the ones that always jump out to me, is on occasion, a gentleman may come in and ask for their son or daughter's birth certificate, and we can provide plain paper copies. That's a public record. However, only immediate family are entitled to the certified records. So we've had more frequent than you could imagine. We'd have folks come in and want a birth record for somebody that they weren't entitled to because they weren't listed as the father. So when you have those conversations in the public, it can be very challenging when you got other people just waiting for their transaction, and they're staring at that interaction. So now we're able to create cubicles where there's some separation between customers. A third piece is security. And the reason that was, it wasn't so much, for staff security from the public. There is a certain now separation between, between the public and our staff, but we used to have the public walking right by our cash register all the time. And it never kind of rubbed me the right way, that we need to figure out a better solution. So that helped us separate that, the cash drawer away from where the public would ever have access to it. And the fourth part is increasing productivity for our staff. We only had 2 people up at the front counter, and that meant the other staff would have to walk back and forth to the front counter and back to their desk, and then end up having very loud communications, across the room to get information that you need from the customer. So it's, I think, a much more productive layout, A, but B, that place had not been updated in 40 plus years. So there was a whole lot of particle board material that's now gone, and hopefully the changes that we made will be there for a long time.
And John, you mentioned that certification process. How long a process was that?
So it's an ongoing process that they do. So it could be done in as early as about a year, but it might take a year and a half to 2 years, just depending upon how active one is with our state association and participating in the meetings.
Okay. And I mean, would pretty much anybody who is a county recorder go through that, or what percentage of county recorders would have that certification?
So I wouldn't want to quote on it for sure. Generally, I think probably the majority do go through the certification program.
Okay.
But I don't know for sure how many folks have done that total. But
yeah. And just give us a little bit of the lay of the land of your office, as far as I'm curious about how many employees there are and kind of the experience level, longevity of those employees. And then also kind of wondering, does everybody do everything, or do some people specialize in one area, or what kind of cross training goes on there?
Yeah, so there's essentially 3 parts to our office as far as the workload. We do the vital records again. Those are birth, death, and marriages. The marriages, are exactly what you're thinking. It's when couples come in to apply for marriages, or when folks need to get a passport, they'll come in and get a copy of their marriage record. Same goes with the birth records. The death records are actually more, for the most part, transactional components with local businesses, primarily funeral homes. That's who most of our work is with those death records. That's one piece, and everybody in the office can do the vital records. Another piece is the DNR. So basically anything that's designed for off-road use comes through us. That's boats, snowmobiles, ATVs. We register and title all of those vehicles. So if it's a camper or a car trailer or an automobile, they all go to the treasurer's office. But anything that's off-road design comes to us. So again, everybody can do the DNR in the office as well. And then the third piece, and it's a very significant piece of what we do, is the land record. So again, every land record that goes through Dubuque County ends up in our office, whether that's from a lender, a bank, credit union, the abstract companies, surveyors. Those documents all come to us, and that is a very significant part of the work that we do is the land records. And it's something that we have about half our staff that is fully trained in doing the land records. We are one person short right now. We are going through the interview process here next week to hopefully bring somebody on. And then we do have 2 deputies that have been there 20 plus years. A former deputy who retired, and I bumped into her about a year ago, and I joked with her because we were flooded with our real estate records. It was the busiest time that we've had since I've been in office by a significant margin, and bumped into her and I joked. I was like, "So you're ready to come back? We could use you." And she paused and I kind of laughed. I said, "Well," I sensed some hesitation. "Are we going to get, could we get you?" And she said, "Well, I might be willing to do a little bit. What do you have in mind?" and we kind of talked about it. And she is, I refer to it as like PRN work, where, like nurses, you're on call. You don't actually owe the employer anything. If you got plans, you don't need to come to work, but on the same page, if we don't have any work for you, we don't owe you any hours either. So we've gotten her to kind of be back as a on-call type vibe, which has been a huge help as well. So we have two current deputy recorders, and then our previous deputy recorder who came back, she is a clerk 4, and then we have two clerk 2s at this time, and I'm sorry, a clerk 3 and a clerk 2, with a clerk 2 to be boarding as soon as the interview process is complete.
Okay. And tell us a bit about how COVID impacted your office. I can imagine several different impacts. Some of those, like you say, I mean, the real estate thing, some of that came in the aftermath of COVID, but early on, I'm sure just working with the public became challenging. And of course, we had mask issues in the courthouse and those sorts of things. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think it's always relevant to be thinking at the time we were in at that moment. And when COVID first occurred, there was a few weeks where the courthouse was closed off to the public. And that was a decision by the Board of Supervisors. And, a couple of the concerns I had initially was the last day we were open. And I think a lot of folks had the sense that society was going to be shutting down for some period of time as we tried to figure out what COVID was going to do to our society. It was, again, before we did the renovation, so the office layout was significantly different, but we had a total of 18 people in about a 15 by 20 space, and people were just crammed together. And I remember thinking, we can't continue this. This doesn't make sense. It's not safe for the public. It's not safe for the staff that I have in the office. And it was concerning that day. So when we closed, the courthouse closed as a whole, it kind of had me reevaluate, like, how can we continue our operations and protect our operations at the same time. And what I ended up doing was kind of working behind the scenes to identify a second location that we could utilize for staff. So what we did was, the one vacant space that we could find was the old jail, where I think their voting begins today. So we utilized that space, and we essentially set up a second office. So with a staff of a total of 6, we split into 2 teams, and it was one team would work in the jail, one would work in the courthouse, with the mindset that if somebody tests positive and we need to spend the next 2 weeks isolating, that we can continue our operation. That was my primary concern, was protecting our operation and protecting our staff. So when we only had 3 of us, A, we're able to space ourselves out significantly, but B, we protected our operations. So if one person tests positive, we don't need to shut everything down and, hey, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, and hopefully nobody else gets it. So we did that for excess of a year. It was just over a year, and it was a challenging time. Luckily, we had staff that was able to do the job effectively, despite being separated. And I know that they expressed some appreciation that we did separate ourselves, so that we, again, have that space. And they knew that I took it very seriously for them, because obviously I wouldn't want it on my shoulders if somebody on staff got sick and had significant challenges. There was one individual on staff that had a family member that was immunocompromised, and I didn't want to live with that either, if something were ever to happen in their home. So we did everything we could to protect our staff, protect our operations, and the part that, most folks, it was just a new way of doing business, but I wrote down the numbers because I think it's very significant. And when I talked about the 3 things that we do, right, between the vital records, the DNR, and land records, every one of those had a significant increase from where we were 3 years ago. The real estate recordings were up 38.18% over the 3 years. And that was, primarily due to low interest rates, right? The number of refinances, release of mortgages that were coming through were significantly higher than what we've experienced since I've been there. And that's, again, was a big piece of the work we do. A couple of the other numbers that mattered for us is our vital records were up 27.6% over that 3-year period. And that's primarily due to the Gold Star requirements for your driver's license. So I don't know if either of you have received that Gold Star on your driver's license.
I still need to do it.
Yep. So make sure you bring your birth certificate in with you. So that is what had a significant increase for us. Is that Gold Star requirement? They previously had, and don't quote me on this part, but I don't have the impression that they require marriage records now if you've ever had a name change. For a period of time, they did require it. So both our birth and marriage records requests were up significantly. Again, 27.6% over that 3-year period. So the third part of what we do is the DNR. So it's all those boats, snowmobiles, ATVs, kayaks, canoes. What was everybody doing as COVID hit? They were trying to find ways to be outside. So our DNR renewals increased 42.72% over those 3 years. So that was a significant workload challenge for us without increasing our staff, was trying to figure out, how do we continue, working when there's such a significant uptick, and our line of communication. Oftentimes, Amy, when you need to pick up that birth record, you might have just came into the office and it's a 5 to 15 minute interaction. You walk out with it. Life is good. But during COVID, when there was a period of time, obviously, where our offices were closed, turned into a lot of phone calls, and then trying to figure out, a new way of doing business and how to get you the information you need, and you filling out the proper paperwork to do so. So it not just was it more work, but it was also, a less efficient way to communicate to get those transactions completed. Now, since when we transitioned out of being, closing the building, we did go to an appointment only period of time, which turned out to be, I think, very beneficial for us, because it regulated the traffic coming in and out the door. So we didn't have anybody, we didn't have lines building. We found a pretty efficient way to do the appointments. We were never more than a week out. But what I really enjoyed is it was a text-based system. So you would jump on your cell phone, create the appointment, and we would communicate that way. And one of the things that turned out to be a blessing, I wish I could, and that will probably be a goal of mine, is to find a way to replicate it, is that when you were done, you picked up your birth record, whether we mailed it to you, or for these appointments, you'd come in. When you walk out with it, the last email or text message you'd get would say, I hope you had a great experience and you were provided with exceptional customer service. If there's anything we can improve upon, please let me know. And it gave my email. Now, the way it was written, it almost sounded like you're asking for criticism. How can we do better? But the truth was, I think there was like 47 communications that we got from that text message. And of those 47, there was one that was upset that we were requiring masks in the building. The others, every single one of them was a positive remark, specifically about the staff that was able to help them most frequently. And it worked out well. And I mean, and when we were doing those appointments, I think it's something that specifically more so in the treasurer's office, they just have a higher volume of traffic, but there was a number of customers that liked it because that meant they don't have to wait in line. They know that this is a time committed to them. They can come in, take care of their business, and be out in 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending upon what they were coming in for. So yeah, I mean, there was definitely some benefits to doing the appointments, but that has come and gone. The truth is, I don't think any of us, referring to the treasurer's office or recorder's office, we never actually turned away customers. We did quote unquote require appointments, but basically it was more of a suggestion that we were trying to get as many people as possible to sign up for the appointment. So it worked out well. It worked out well. I don't know if there's a whole lot I would have done differently through COVID.
Anything that you did implement during that period that remains today?
So it's funny because you're asking me to go back 3 years of what we changed and now that we've stuck with it. I'm not sure that we've maintained a lot. There's probably been a few little wrinkles just in regards to how we kind of deliver work a little bit to each other. But that was actually one of the challenges. It was when so when we did that office renovation, it was also while we had another office set up in the old jail, right? So we can continue our operations. Customers don't see a difference. And it's while the building was closed. So it worked out really well to get that renovation completed. But I don't know that we made any major changes other than one of the challenging parts was when we came back together. It was essentially two different teams that have figured out their own ways of doing business. And then it was, hey, we need to marry each other again and figure out, how to take care of the workload in a full staff operation instead of a half staff operation.
Yeah. And tell us about what a typical day is like for you. Are you in there doing all these various the three tasks that you kind of outlined, the three different components? Are you right in there doing those things day to day, or is there other work that occupies your time?
Yeah. So, I mean, for my time, I mean, in addition to what's, going on in the office, um, I don't spend a lot of time on the land records. It's something that I've kind of made that commitment to myself that I need to get better at. It's the indexing. What we do is, it's the gold standard for land records. So we scan it into the system. We give um, that the basic information to start to get it into the system, but then we complete it, which is indexing all the information. So that's legal descriptions, the names of the grantor, the grantee. And after we do that, I mean, we do a very redundant job. We actually come back, and once you complete it, you do the whole job. You basically hand it off to another person, and then they do the same exact thing. Now, I understand that that doesn't sound efficient and nobody wants to be inefficient, but on the same page, it's called blind key verification. So when we enter it once and we come back and enter it a second time, if there's a simple spelling error where, for the name John, it was spelled Jon instead of John, it'll pop up a red flag and say something doesn't match. It's not saying what's right. It's just saying you need to look at it again. And that's to make sure that the goal is obviously zero errors that make it through this double check system, almost a triple check to it. And not a lot of counties do that. They do what they call site verification, which is you print it off and then you look at your document, you go back and you try and match things up. We trust the software to do that for us because it's significantly more efficient that way. Now it's something that, I mean, if with me, I do spend some time out of the office, and that is on a number of things. When I currently serve as the legislative liaison for the Recorders Association. That is something that my predecessors that have had that role for the association, they would spend 1 or 2 or even 3 days a week during the legislative session in Des Moines. I'll be honest with you, I spent a fair amount of time at that Capitol as a child. I've had enough experience at the Capitol and I've enjoyed it when I was young there, but truth is I don't want to spend a lot of time in the legislature. My colleague, I serve as the Democratic legislative liaison. There's one that's a Republican and she's based out of Story County, and we're kind of partners in addressing the legislative issues that recorders have. So with her being in Story, I rely upon her spending more time at the state capitol than myself. And I'd like to keep it that way. I've expressed that I will not spend a lot of time at the Capitol, but ISAC meetings, there are a couple of a year, as well as an annual meeting with the Recorders Association that's separate from ISAC. So, being a participant in these state associations make me a much better recorder, and I think they do a great job for our office ultimately. So I do spend a fair amount of time at those meetings. The other thing that there's a handful of interests, but another one that I do spend a fair amount of time outside of the office is I was appointed to serve on the Community Action Agency's statewide commission. I would have to double check, but at the time that I was originally appointed in 2016, I've now been reappointed twice, originally by Governor Branstad and now by Governor Reynolds twice. And on that committee, I was the only Democrat serving on that committee. And that does require a fair amount of work being on the committee. But I think it's an honor to serve on that commission for the community action agencies, helping the people that are most vulnerable in our state. It's been a great opportunity. It's been a pleasure to be on that board. I've spent the last 2 years serving as the chair of that commission. I have been renominated to serve as chair again this year. So it's something when you get asked to be on these committees and on these commissions, I take it pretty serious. And the last thing I want to do is be skipping these meetings because I think they're very important. But that also means that I have to step outside of the office to go participate. The other local board that I'm on is the Dubuque Area Labor Management Council. I've served on there for years, and it's again been a very good experience. And there's some things there that take me out of the office as well. So It's one of, if folks want to ask how much time I'm out of the office, I would own that in a heartbeat. That I think it's doing some very important things, both as a recorder, but also as a community member. And that said, I mean, I guess I have the longevity here, but I'm pretty confident that there's no other elected official that's spent as much time in that courthouse as I have over the last 8 years. Now I can say that with a certain level of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something, I mean, through COVID, different department heads, different elected officials reacted differently, but I did not miss any time other than the first month or so, 6 weeks, whatever that period was, that we did split staffing in the courthouse where we kind of went on an A-B schedule and fell behind very quickly, actually. But with exception of that time period, I never did not go to work for that time in COVID.
A couple of follow-up questions on some of the stuff that you were explaining there. As far as that double check system that you have, is that something that was that implemented on your watch, or is that the way it had been done previously?
Yeah, so Kathy Flynn Thurlow, the recorder previous to me, that was something that she implemented. And I asked to confirm exactly what it was and comparing it to the site verification, and it took me about 5 minutes to realize, no, I'm willing to spend a few extra minutes indexing this information correctly. So it's something that was done before me and something that I'm proud to continue, and it will continue to be our practice until I'm no longer in that office, unless there's something better that comes along, which there has been some very initial technology ideas that have been presented, but I don't feel comfortable with it yet. And what it is using artificial intelligence to start. They basically watch you work. It's a computer program that runs in the background and do that for a period of months. And it learns how you index, and then it replicates it on its own. So in theory, we could cut back our staff time, maybe, a significant amount. So instead of completing and verifying, doing that full job twice, we might only have to do it once and let the artificial intelligence do it the other time. But I think I'm a big believer that anytime you're going to really delve into new technology like that, you want to let some others learn the hard way before we'd ever sign up for it.
Okay. And so you said that the past land records that is all complete, and then so are there other records that still need to be digitized, or is it all done?
Yeah, so all land records are digitized. They're all in there. What we have additionally, and what I'm looking forward to doing, is specifically on the digitizing of new records. Is we've done all of our military records. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but we have done all of our military records, and that's actually, I should have brought it up because it's one of the things that I'm very proud of, is that we've kind of broken down some barriers that we had in county government, because the way it used to work is our VA staff would call over and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a military record for John Smith. Do you have it? Here's his date of service." We would check it. We'd confirm, yes, we do have it. It's, "Oh, great. Can you print one off and I'll come over and pick it up?" So once we digitized all that, we gave access to our VA staff to that technology. Now that's not public information, so that's not sitting on the website. You can't go and look at it yourself. But it is available for our VA staff, so they can print it on their own, and we don't need to have multiple phone calls and let our VA staff walk across the parking lot multiple times a day to come over and pick up records. So that's something I'm proud of as well. I mean, additional things that we could scan in. We do have plat cabinets and this is something that we're actively communicating with a vendor now. The challenge is because of all that ARPA money, these software vendors are scheduled out for years. It is that's going to be the challenge now. Is for the first time, a lot of people in roles similar to mine have access to money to do some of their wish list items. But what we are going to do is those plat records have been digitized, but they're not as useful as you'd hope because they get it's such a small image. So when we scan those in, they're going to be scanned in life size. So if it's a 36-inch document, you'll be able to view that 36 inches and then print accordingly off of it. So we want to make sure, again, if those plat cabinets, something ever happened to them, that we we would have a fully functional, useful record that's digitized into that system.
Mm-hmm. And the other follow-up I wanted to ask was regarding your role as legislative liaison. What sorts of issues come up in the legislature that pertain to recorder's office?
So it depends. Last year, something that caught recorders, and this isn't a partisan complaint here. This is something that the recorders were very caught off guard, was the Back to Blue legislation. It's something that, I think there was widespread support for it, but a piece that was in there that recorders did not know about until it was literally signed into law. We got our eyes on it the day the governor signed the bill, the Back to Blue legislation. One of those pieces was that designed to protect specific individuals, some in the judicial branch, some in law enforcement, that they can remove their names from all public records. And a quick glance, that sounds like a phenomenal idea. We led, and when I say we, it would be the Recorders Association along with Iowa Land Records. We put together a process to address exactly what the law is and how to properly move forward to redact the information that is pertinent. Now, the bill was poorly written, at least on this piece of the legislation. And what was very poorly written about it is that essentially it would take your name off the record itself, but not on the index. So in theory, I worked in law enforcement briefly out of college with the sheriff's department, worked up in the jail. And if I were eligible to remove my information now, what it would do is you could search by index and you'd see my name and my wife's name and the deed to our property, and you'd see the mortgage information. Again, all public information. But what it would do is actually, when you go into the document itself and you look at the image of the document, it would redact my name and my name only. So you'd know where I live, what the parcel number is, and you could look at the address that's attached to it. It just, once you look at the document itself, that my name would be removed, but not necessarily if my wife's name is obviously on the deed and on the mortgage, it'd still all be visible there. So it really didn't do anything effective. So we created the process to have it removed. And the problem is if I would have been that officer that had my information redacted, is 10 years from now, I'm no longer in law enforcement. I wouldn't have that same protection to have your information redacted. So yeah, it has to be renewed every couple of years. And the fact is, yes, it might take it off of the document itself, but A, it's not off the index, which is what most people would see anyhow. But B, is that's not where folks are going to find our information, right? I mean, I'm sure you've Googled names before and like, wow, I didn't realize their whole life story is available on the internet. It's there through whether it's media reports or, career opportunities or car accidents, whatever it is. There's an awful lot of data that's available online, and very little that has to do with the public records that they were trying to protect in that legislation. So, I mean, that was a big piece for us last year. Right now, we're trying to make some changes on trade name forms. That is an ambition for us. That's a lot of minutia I don't think you want to hear about. But a couple other pieces. When we look at the recording fees for documents, it's $7 for page one, $5 for every additional page. It's been that way for 35 years. Here in Dubuque, just looking at fees. I mean, those fees for land records haven't changed in 40 years. For every boat we register, every ATV we register, we get $1.25. The rest of the fees all go to the state. When you're looking at those vital records, it's $15 for a certified copy. $5 stays in Dubuque County. The other 10 all goes to the state. Those things have not changed in decades. So when I'm looking at our office specifically, we have been very effective. We are one of 10 to 12 counties in the state that are self-sustaining, which means not through tax dollars, but through those fees for the land records, for those $1.25 on the ATVs, and for those $5 on the vital records. That's enough for us to pay for our staff, for our insurance, for all the paper, for everything that costs to operate. With exception of maybe the lights. I don't think we paid for electricity and maybe our internet, but we're paying for just about everything. And we've had it since I've been there, about a little over $700,000 that we've been able to give back to the county. So that $700,000 that property taxpayers are not paying for our services. The problem is that the vast majority of counties aren't self-sustaining. Something I think that is going to be at the focal point of the legislature next year, if there's not significant changes between the governor and the House and the Senate, is that they are going to absolutely put a cap on what counties can do in regards to property taxes. And when they do that, I think one thing that they need to be able to, that I think as recorders, we're going to try and be prepared for, is if you're going to do that, you have to give some flexibility for fees for counties to offset. If you want us to lower taxes, you can't handcuff our fees to fees that haven't changed in decades. Everything costs more today than it did 10 years ago, let alone 30 or 40 years ago. And, looking at the potential of those recording fees or those the reimbursements that we get for the vital records or for the DNR, I think it's probably a long time that we have those conversations. Mm-hmm. So those are just a few of the things that come about as a legislative liaison for us to address.
Allie, I'll let you jump in if you have questions here. Now you're settled.
Yeah, sorry about that, you guys.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, it was a technical difficulty followed by another one. So tell me, tell me a little bit more about, and so I apologize if I asked something that came up while I was running around. I guess I'm interested in tell me about kind of, you're getting close to election, what have you been doing ahead of the election? Have you been out talking to folks? What are the things that you're hearing from people? And what for you with a new term are the things that you say, hey, let's do this with another, another term. What are the things that are on your list of, I want to get, things to get done or, yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've addressed some of that, but I think it's fair to answer that, right, Amy? I don't think I've covered it too significantly. So something that I've been vocal about since last term, when I was up for re-election 4 years ago, I was pleasantly surprised to be endorsed by more than 20 Republican recorders from around the state. I think that's something that the public absolutely needs to hear, because too often they're only hearing the negatives in politics specifically, whether that's, some of the challenges we've had here at Dubuque County, I think are fair to address, but also, statewide and nationally, that, I'm proud of the fact that I've received those endorsements, and those are relationships that I've worked hard to build and to instill trust in them as other recorders around the state. But I hope that they have the same trust in me. And frankly, they gave me better quotes than I'd ever. If they told me write whatever you want, I wouldn't have wrote things that were nearly as flattering as they did. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by it. It's something that I don't think it's a secret that there's been challenges at the courthouse for much of my second term here. I don't, to my knowledge, knock on wood, I don't think any of them have been really focused on my office. And I think there's something to be said for that. The courthouse oftentimes has a feel of like a junior high, that things spread awfully quick through that building. And, I think, being, my goal is to be efficient, to be competent, to be professional. And I expect the same out of everybody in the office. And I think they do a phenomenal job. But I think, being, we haven't been an issue, for a lot of, fodder that occurs on social media and whatnot. That said, I'm not, my goal is not to be, go off in the corner, do my job and not be seen. I mean, there's been times where I've addressed concerns that I have, and whether that was like almost 4 years ago to the day, when we had some outbreaks at the courthouse, that was something that I flagged. And it was, frankly, it was hard to do because it was, I was calling out colleagues and other departments, and they weren't happy with it. And I think that, that may have created challenges that have been longstanding. But at the same day, I wouldn't have done it any other way, because it allowed me to sleep well at night, knowing that if something happened where somebody came in and got an exposure to COVID, and they had to live with the consequences of it, and I was aware of it, I would have not been able to sleep well at night. And that was, primarily, I didn't want to go into exact departments because I didn't think it was appropriate given the timing, but it's something that, there was a lot of Democratic elected officials that were not happy with me then. And same can be said for, I was back in May of 2017. I think it was a Facebook post where I talked about some of the challenges and some of the discrepancies that I saw at Sunnycrest, referring to the way that they were being funded. I brought up those concerns and I flagged them because I thought it was wrong. And it's something that it took a while, but it was acknowledged that yes, there was some budgeting changes that occurred that painted a different picture than what it should have in reality. So, I mean, it's something that I'm not looking for confrontations at all, but on the same page, if something jumps out at me, I'm absolutely going to address it. That's kind of just who I am as a person. I'm not afraid to be in those conversations and to address serious concerns. But on the same page, my goal is to come in again, be competent, efficient, professional, provide exceptional customer service in the office. But I'm not. I'm hopefully not going to be the one that's drumming up too much business for you guys.
John, should the role of recorder be a partisan position?
It's a good question. So does it need to be? No. I don't think it matters a whole heck of a lot if I'm a Democrat or a Republican doing that job. It's something that what I've realized as the legislative liaison, where we have conversations with all the affiliates, those affiliates being supervisors, sheriffs, county attorneys, auditors, treasurers, and recorders. When we look at that, as a whole, they've always wanted to maintain their role, and part of the reason why is I think I'm proud to be a Democrat, absolutely, but I think when you look at it from a statewide perspective, that a lot of times, it might, looking at my seat specifically, I think historically a Democrat would be more likely to win this seat. That may have changed over the last couple election cycles. I think we're no longer a solid blue county, but I think when folks have a target on their back as being red or blue, they want to own that. And if you take away the partisanship, then suddenly now they're not necessarily getting the partisan support. They're only getting the wrong side of it. So I think if there's a move, I mean, again, it's not our decision whether or not we're partisan or not, as far as elected offices. That's done at the state level. But I think if they're going to do it, I would strongly suggest setting a date, whether it's 5 or 10 years down the road, to sunset the partisanships, so that folks have a chance to understand what's coming. And I think it'd be beneficial to if they were going to make changes, to go ahead and have that sunset down the road.
Is there anything else that we haven't asked you about that you want to be sure we know, that regarding your tenure, or what you see in the time ahead?
Well, I'll tell you what, first of all, this is much easier than the forum where we have a minute and a half to answer. Much easier. But, I think the one thing that I really appreciate, and it's looking at, when I reference those text messages that were primarily positive, a lot of those stories are what I like to tell. I could probably sit here for the next 20 minutes talking about my staff going above and beyond. Some of them are about me, but most of the time, the ones I'm going to sit and toot our horn are the stories where staff goes above and beyond. And one that jumps out, it was one of the, I was maybe in office 4 or 5 months. And this is, I don't want to say this specifically is a common theme, but, I try to always think of problems as opportunities. So, and instead of telling you the big stories, what I'll do is one example that I can think of is in Iowa, there's a 3-day waiting period to get married. So if you want to get married this Saturday, you better be in our office by close of business Tuesday. Otherwise, we have to get a judge to sign a waiver. I can count probably a dozen to 15 of those where it's, folks maybe they just forget, but otherwise maybe they're coming back to Dubuque. This is where they're originally from, but they don't come in till Thursday or Friday, and they want to get their paperwork, and it's explained to them, like, we got it on our website, we're trying to be very vocal about it, but at the end of the day, I don't have that control to provide a marriage record that'd be valid on Saturday. So, when I first got here, it was, well, send them up to court administration, and they'll have to see if they can find a judge to sign off on it. Sometimes during order hours, sometimes not. And I've taken a much different approach. If somebody calls in on Wednesday afternoon and says, hey, we're going to get married on Saturday, when can I fill out the paperwork? I don't want to be the one advocating for them exactly what the relationship is, but on the same page, I'll say, hey, why don't you send me an email that explains how long you've been engaged, how long you've been dating, your guys' backstory, what your plans are for the wedding. And I'll take that sheet up and I will present it to one of the judges and see if we can get them to sign off on a 3-day waiver. So that's something I've done numerous times. And that's the approach I want. Hey, it is a problem for us to help those people, but instead of giving them another, a phone number to a bureaucratic office, let's try and take that extra step, make their life easier. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty rewarding when you have a nervous bride or groom just days before their wedding being told that we cannot provide you the marriage record. You can't get married on Saturday without this. So that's one of those rewarding times. And I think it's the stories like that where we're able to go above and beyond. And you have, I can probably think of a couple dozen occasions where there's bride or grooms with very heavy handshakes or hugs saying, thank you so much for helping us out. So that's something that's the approach that we have in the office since I've been here.
Great. Well, we really appreciate your time today, John. I'll circle back, I guess, if anything else comes up or as we share this with our colleagues. But thank you for your time and good luck. Here we go over the next 3 weeks.
Can't be over soon enough. Thank you much.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.